Hi, Econ kids. I wanted to give you quick notes over Chapter 7, Section 2, which is over market structures. So go ahead and get started on that now. All right, and you don't need to see me. Okay, so this section is over market failures, how they fail and how these failures can be fixed. And here we go. I'm also going to put this stuff on Classroom for you. So if I move too quickly through here, if you need to pause it or whatever, that's totally fine. Okay, so when the markets, which we talked about in Section 1, and the criteria for the market, if those are not working like they're supposed to, then we can have a market failure. The most common types are these 5, and you're going to need to know these 5 for the test, quizzes, and things that are coming up. So we've got inadequate competition, inadequate info, resource immobility, meaning it's not able to move, externalities, and public goods. You don't need to know that. Okay, so the first one is inadequate competition. And remember, I had mentioned before at some point that the government gets involved and says, you know what, T-Mobile and AT&T, no, you cannot merge together because you're going to be way too big. That would be inadequate competition. So the government is in charge of making sure that companies don't become too big and harm the consumer by making the prices really high and that sort of thing. So the airlines, that's a big one where a lot of these smaller airlines might merge with these bigger ones. And then if the big ones want to merge together, I can't remember exactly which ones, but I feel like it was like American and United maybe wanted to merge together and the government said no. And it's just like even when AT&T became too big, the government said, you know what, we're going to break you up. You guys are way too big. You're monopoly status. So we need to protect the consumers. And that's considered inadequate competition. Okay, inadequate competition just means that it's where there's no incentive. One of the problems is there's no incentive for the resources to be used in a careful manner. Ooh, this is a good one, and this happens. So there may be a shortage, and that's the company creating a shortage, though. It's not like it's because of some natural disaster or whatnot. It's a shortage because the company's saying, hey, we're going to give them a limited supply, and that way we're going to have higher prices because this is something that they want or there's a need for, and we know that. So if we limit the supply, we can push the price up. Oh, this is another one. Large businesses can exert their economic power over politics. I'm sure you guys have heard of lobbyists before. These are the people who go in front of Congress and fight for their industry. If certain companies within an industry become so powerful, then they're able to kind of twist the arm of the politicians to get them to do what is best for their industry or their company. And that would be considered inadequate competition, and we don't want that. All right, inadequate info. This is just going to be the transparency. So as a consumer, you want to make sure that you're aware of, if you are investing in this company that's publicly traded, that you know all of their financials, that you have all that information so that you're not investing in something that, the company's being dishonest about. Maybe they're saying they're a $4 million company and really they're only a $100,000 company. I just completely made that up. But so that would be adequate information. If they're not able to provide that, then they would be in trouble, and then that could cause a market failure. Resource immobility. The thing I think about the most with this is going to be labor. So when workers, maybe they're laid off, and I always go back to the Indiana Anderson example, GM. Think about Anderson today in the present, and it's, a struggling town. And in the 60s, 70s, 80s, even into the 90s, it was a very prosperous place because of GM. Well, when the factories left, a lot of the people that were able left also. And the ones that stuck around, some of them were able to find jobs, but a lot of people were not. And so people that are going to remain unemployed would be considered immobile. I believe on the test, it's going to be a question about labor being immobile. So they're not going to be able to go and find something that's, as lucrative as what they had before. They aren't able to go to another town. They can't move. They don't have the means to be able to do that. So that would be an example of resource immobility. Okay, I just said this basically when they can't or won't move to a better market. The existing market does not always function efficiently. We talked about this on Wednesday's Ed Puzzle when you watch the crash course on externalities. These are those unintended consequences that are either a good thing to some third party or a bad thing to some third party. The negatives are going to be pollution. The one comic there is, I don't know if this guy's farted. I think he passed gas, farted. But it's like all those people that are in there, they didn't pay for that, but they're suffering this inconvenience that they have nothing to do with. So when you think of externalities, I think it's the negative stuff. So I think on that Ed Puzzle, I put something about people that work at Hamilton Town Center in the summer when there's concerts. They might have to leave extra early to get to their job because of concert traffic. Okay, so that would be a negative externality. On that same thing with HTC and the concerts, what about somebody who lives near there and they really like the music that's being played, but they didn't buy a concert ticket? They can sit on their back porch and listen to it. That would be a positive. So that would be a positive externality. They had nothing to do with the activity, but it created a benefit for them. I like this Arlo and Janice comic because it's showing how this guy is scraping the walk, clearing the walk for people. He's not worried about his cat, but the cat is reaping the benefit of it as well. And these are considered failures because, and you need to pay attention to this, you'll see this again, the market prices that buyers and sellers pay do not reflect the costs and or the benefits of the action. So just make sure that you understand that definition in that form. Public goods. Okay, so public goods are going to be things that the private sector is not going to deal with because they aren't going to be profitable with it. So that means that the government is going to be the one to step in and make sure that these things are taken care of. This example right here would be a public beach. Fireworks. Remember on the video, we talked about how you can't stop somebody from looking up at the sky and seeing the fireworks. And we also have that non-exclusion and non-rivalry example. It's that I want to touch on again. With non-exclusion, so that would be an firework example. And that just means that you can't keep people from using it if they don't pay, or you can't keep people from viewing it if they don't pay. Non-rivalry, we could say, this public beach, non-rivalry. So the use of this beach by others doesn't diminish enjoyment from other people that are there. Now, obviously, if it's going to be super, super, super crowded, yes, that would diminish maybe your enjoyment. But for the most part, public parks, public beaches, they're going to have that non-rivalry. So anyhow, the public good, it's got to have both of those characteristics: non-exclusion, non-rivalry. Okay, so this again is going to be the definition, but you have to understand that the public sector is not going to get involved in this because they're not going to be making money off of the people who are still using the product or viewing the product because they can't keep them from enjoying it and force them to pay. Another example would be national defense. You can't say, okay, this person paid their taxes, this person paid their taxes, this person right next to those two people, right in between them, did not. So we're going to protect everybody on the street but that household. It doesn't really work that way. And that is the end of section 2. I do want to go briefly over how the government gets involved. And we have talked about, making sure that these monopolies don't get so big so that these companies get so big so that there's inadequate competition. I'm not going to ask you about the Clayton antitrust law. It says that it outlawed price discrimination. Remember, some price discrimination is okay. We talked about that in the last unit or two back, where like coupons, pricing for veterans, teachers, senior citizens, kids, that sort of stuff, using your Ricker's Rewards card. That stuff's okay, but just pricing it differently is not. FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, they, basically oversee that making sure that these companies are conducting business in a fair way. I do want to talk about this one, public disclosure. And this goes with the inadequate info. So companies are going to have to disclose information about what's in their products, what type of things go into their services so that the consumer is not in the dark. So publicly disclosing means that they are going to tell all the info that is in their product or service. That public disclosure is going to be something that's on the test. So, like I said before, it's providing adequate information to prevent market failures. Also, like way back, like even the Pure Food and Drug Act from Teddy Roosevelt, early 1902 or something. Remember when back then people could sell cough syrup and not disclose what was in it, and it could just be water, and people would be buying that thinking that it was cough syrup. So regulations were put in place to protect the consumer. So that's going to be, this truth in advertising, public disclosure, giving all your ingredients and that sort of thing. If they are untruthful, then they would be in trouble. It's against the law to do that. So that is that for chapter 7. If you have any questions over this, let me know. I hope you guys have a great weekend and you're staying healthy. I will be back to talk to you soon.